We'll put that into your browser. Her website will come up. It gives information on how to get in touch with her as well as her phone number. You'll see here, before I turn it over to Stacy, Clifton Park Tree Committee announces. This is a new program that we're really happy to be launching, Trees of Distinction. And the way it happened, in one of our meetings last year, we started talking about heritage trees. Now, heritage trees are historical trees. We wanted to have a heritage tree program, and then we found out we couldn't because our town historian said, well, we don't have any heritage trees. Those are trees that are usually connected with an historical event. And, you know, the Declaration of Independence, you know, nothing major was done around here, so we didn't want to drop the idea, and so we came up with the idea, Trees of Distinction. We contacted the Arbor Day Foundation, we spoke to our regional forester, we got their input, we got everybody's input, we got input from 30 members of the community, and we came up with this program that we are soon going to launch, and we have board approval to do that. So we are going to ask people to nominate a favorite tree that you have. We are going to be considering criteria like age, height. We'll tell you how to do those measurements, the species and ecological value, aesthetics, but also, is there a special story that you'd like to share? So we really want you guys out there nominating a favorite tree, and we are going to launch that, and then we will be recognizing whether it's one tree or a few trees next Arbor Day 2025. So wait to get more details on this, and thank you for coming. I'm going to turn it over to Stacy.
Thank you. Thanks. Great to see everybody tonight. This is exciting. I have to tell you, you've probably heard this from other people. Can you hear me okay? Everybody? Okay. There's a microphone, but I'd really rather not use it. I've been teaching via Zoom for the last 4 years for master gardeners and things, and it's just nice to have real people in front of me again. So thank you. All right, so I'm going to try not to say too many times. I seem to have lodged that back in during Zoom here. So, all right, so tree health, caring for the trees as your tree grows. It's why we're all here tonight. And throw the questions out there as we go. Don't store them up. I prefer to answer them as we go. Even if it's not your question, if somebody sends you with a question, go ahead and ask those too. You're going to notice I am not an IT or a techie person, but the information is going to be accurate. So I usually have help with these things, but that person was not available to me this time, so bear with me. Blue background, I'm a blue skies person, so tree selection, planting day, continued care. Those are basically the three main topics tonight. The more you get right for the tree in each one of those sections, the healthier and more successful your tree or trees will be. I am gearing this right toward trees, and forgive me if I slipped into woody perennials or shrubs, things like that on you, because a lot of what I'm going to talk about tonight translates across. It's not even just for trees. So. Tree selection. Obviously, you can get your trees from a multitude of places these days. Online, local nurseries. Although we love local nurseries, you have plenty of lovely local nurseries around to shop from. So please visit them for more mature trees and younger trees. It's not even just about finding the biggest tree. It's about finding the tree that is going to go work for your situation. The other one on the right, that's your Arbor Day Foundation, so you can get your trees from there. There's still some areas or places around the area that you can get some barrier tree material from. I don't know if anybody did the conservation trees this year. Yes, good. I got my badge. They're waiting in a pot right now because they're like, Stacy has no time to get them in the ground, but I will. They have a healthy little soil they're working with right now. So, but while you're out there making your tree selections, be mindful of what you're selecting, and that leads into this: right plant, right place. And I know we've probably all heard this, and if you've been to any kind of a plant talk, whether it's a tree talk or not, you might be thinking, wow, this is ad nauseum, but right plant, right place is extremely important. So in the, that think long-term with a tree, we're not working with a plant that has 5 years of life like some of our perennials, and then, we might divide it and make it last a little bit longer. It's a tree. This plant is supposed to outlive us. So, right plant, right place. You can probably guess why I selected this photo to share with you tonight. That tree is gonna probably outgrow its space within the next 10 to 15 years. And it's probably gonna have roots that are going to reach out, pop that sidewalk, get the tree in all kinds of trouble, especially when it trips at least 3 humans in one day and they all report back to town hall. So, think about where that tree's really going, and okay, it says on the tag or the information you got from another human being who's supposed to be sharing that information with you, tree's supposed to be 35 feet wide. I see a lot of people guesstimating it. I don't know about you, but when I guesstimate spaces, I could be wrong, horribly wrong. Like I could be like, well, from me to the wall, I don't know, what, 40 feet? I don't know. Could be 50, I'm not sure. If you're just as bad at guesstimating spaces, measure it, especially when you're placing trees, especially near sidewalks, things like that. So keep that in mind, for your long-term planning on trees, as far as right plant, right place. The rest of it is lighting and, all the normal needs of a tree, whether, water needs, can you get a hose out to it, or how are you gonna water that tree? We'll talk about mulch later. We'll get to that. That's gonna be a little bit later. So, but staking, there's different modes of action for staking. That staking's gonna work for that tree, maybe for the the first few years. But how long do you actually need that staking? The longer you keep a tree staked, it's like having a crutch. So, get the straight, get that crutch off of the tree. But back to right plant, right place. So just pay attention to where that tree's really going. And who knows, I might be beating this picture up for no good reason. That could be a dwarf tree that's only gonna push 8 feet wide. So, I don't know what that tree is. I just know that potentially it might not be right for that space. We'll hope that it was. But yeah, think long term, definitely. Like, look at the mature size of the tree and then work backward into your planting job.
Put the light on so we can see.
Oh, that's up to you guys. Yep, thank you. Thanks. So sense of place, and this is if everything goes out all at once, Kathy. I can still do this talk. You just won't have visuals. How's that? They changed it. So sense of place, and this comes to mind a lot for me because working out in Galway, I'm more in touch with a lot of the people who are coming out of the Adirondacks to get plants to take home or up to their camp or whatever. And I see a lot of not so Adirondack plants trying to go up there. So I do my best to be like, well, hey, they're like, oh, we don't like white pine. Yeah, but it's a native, it kind of belongs in the Adirondacks. So, so Adirondack Mountains, Rocky Mountains. When you go to one or the other, if you're a tourist or traveling or whatever, you expect certain things to be there, certain trees to be there, certain animals, etc. Adirondack Mountains, we expect our maples. We expect a show like no other in the middle of, autumn. Rocky Mountains, if they didn't have those gorgeous aspens out there, nobody, I wouldn't say nobody would go. They'd still go. The mountains are gorgeous without them, but those are things we expect to see when we're there. Think about that when you're, and I'm gearing this toward public as well as homeowner planting, because if you are active with the tree committees, you need more people, but if you're active in public plantings and things like community plantings, think about the trees that you're planting. Does the maple actually work? Does the maple actually work? Thank you. Does it really work for that space? As far as representing the space, what trees would represent Clifton Park, Charlton, Burnt Hills, any of those trees? And if you look around, like Mother Nature's kind of dotted the plants in already, and we've come to drive by them every day and not really think about them, even though they still give us that sense of place. We know where we are. farmland, and all of a sudden there's a hedgerow of whatever, whether it's pines, maples, could be an invasive species at this point, who knows? But they give us a sense of place, a sense of home, and from the tourist's perspective, when they're coming into our area, because obviously we kind of need them from time to time, they're going to come to recognize the area by its trees, whether they know it or not. It's almost subliminal. Something to think about. I like to poke these things in for food for thought because I do see heads going, oh. And again, it's not something we think about immediately when we think about our trees. When we think when we think sense of place, there's a lot of other things we think about first. Like, oh, the schools, the teams, the colors, the things like that. But our trees do it as well. Our mascots. No. Thank you for the announcement, friend. All right, I have a bird at home. She likes to announce as well, so can't get in the door without her. All right, so tree preferences, and what I mean by this, every now and then I put things out because they're stuck in my head, and then I'm like, oh, that's going to make zero sense to everybody else. So here's the explanation for this. Tree preferences are, how does this tree like to grow? Does it like to grow by itself, or does it prefer a community to grow in a grove with other trees, or even a tree community made up of other trees and shrubs? So it could even go that far for the health of the tree. The USDA Forest Service, if you go to their website, or you could even just search for, say, native range of red maples, and it will pull up red maple with all kinds of fun information and a map that says where it's going. But somewhere in the middle of all that fun information, it will tell you who the red maple is living with and where. So it could be like red maples living with larch and whatever the understory plants are. You can glean a lot of fun information from that when you're planting, so that like, well, if I plant these together, first of all, they're gonna live well together because they're used to it. Second of all, it's because they look right together. I've seen it before. So this is where our natives come in to teach us who we should plant together and where they should go. So that USDA Forest Service website is lovely. I use it a lot when I'm making recommendations for people. But the groups and groves, think about planting them together. You actually have a lot of places throughout Clifton Park, whether it's your park spaces or even some of the larger green spaces near the shopping areas and whatnot, where more than one tree can be planted together instead of one just dotted in a median and move on and whatnot. I'm not going to get into the tree's lonely thing and whatnot. You don't want to go there. but think about giving them friends. Or like black walnut doesn't need a friend and actually doesn't want too many friends. It puts that juggaleoni out in its roots to stake its claim, and nobody really gets close to that tree. There's a very short list of other plants that can grow well under or near the root system, or under the tree or near the root system of a black walnut. So I don't know if anybody's ever looked at that list, but it's a short list of other shrubs and shorter trees and things like that. So that tree, it's lovely. Put it right out there in the middle, let it grow, do its own thing. A lot of your trees that are pioneer trees, or what they call rhododendron trees, those are wonderful as standalone trees. They might not last as long as some of our maples and oaks and things like that, but they're good trees to use for those parking lots, for those planting areas, something a little closer to the edge of the road where you're like, oh, I don't know how, I can't put a big tree there. Because a lot of these, like your poplars and things like that, they're short-lived trees, but they're a little smaller, their roots are a little gentler on sidewalks and things like that. So it's, don't leave them out as a choice. I know a lot of people say, oh, poplars, that's a weed tree. Well, there's a lot of them around and they have a place, but they definitely could be used. They're beautiful when they're kind of hanging out by themselves. They do have a nice shade, they have nice bark, so just food for thought though. A lot of food for thought tonight. That's kind of where we're headed tonight. So. so that is your tree selection. Just getting started with figuring out who you're actually going to plant and then, you know, where you want to plant it, make sure everything is set up for the tree and the human. Don't leave the human out, because if that happens, the human's gonna come through and trim your tree. We know how that works. Get it too close to power lines, get it too close to the edge of the road or the sidewalk, whatever it is. Gotta definitely think about the human and the tree needs. Marry them together. So planting day, I think we all just went through one of these last week. I hope everybody had fun on Arbor Day. So yes. If you didn't plant a tree last week, that's okay. There's plenty of time. It's a short growing season, but we still have plenty of time. So here we go. On planting day, and I'm sorry for those of you who've already planted, but here we go. Planting depths, and I put up these two root balls. I actually sent these two pictures. We work with a lot of towns and DEC included for Arbor Day. A lot of the Arbor Day plantings, they come and they get their trees. Most of the time it's a ball and burlap tree. They're like, send us a picture of how this really should be planted. Like, is this a test? I'm like, okay, so I'll send you a picture. So this is the picture. These are the two pictures I sent, and you can see obviously there are two different root ball structures. I will be honest with you, I don't recall which trees they were. I think it was maple and oak, but it could be the other way around. But the red line is the soil depth line. That is where the existing soil line is in your yard or wherever the planting site is. All of that soil that is above there, it's extra flop. So when they, and there's not, I don't think there's an actual term for it, I just call it flop. So when they go in with the tree spade to dig these trees out of the fields, when they pull them up and put them into the basket, there's always excess soil that just comes up and drops on top. Most people are like, well, why is that a problem? Well, it's a problem because it buries the root collar of the tree. And we don't want to do that. We don't want to leave that soil there. So if you're planting, that's also, it's like the shoulder of the root ball. If you're planting yours, you're making your soil depth above that red line, above the shoulder, you're actually burying the root collar of the tree. Okay, everybody's like, why is this important? So that's a spot. The root collar is where your trunk meets your roots. It's a place where the tree breathes. It needs to breathe. And if it's buried, I have some pictures at the end, some extra content. I'll show you what happens. But there are adventitious roots that shouldn't come out of the trunk of the tree. They're coming out of places that they shouldn't, to try to make up for the predicament of a buried root collar. As they push out of the trunk of the tree, they'll slowly girdle the tree. And it depends upon how quickly the tree grows, how quickly the girdling happens. You also get suckering, because the tree will just start suckering with a buried root collar. And I'm sure, if everybody wants to take a little hike with me, we could run outside and see a couple. There are most trees, maples, ornamental trees, so your ornamental pears, your crab apples, all of those faster growing trees, you'll see a lot of suckering in the area because there are very few trees that are planted with their root collar at soil level where it belongs. We tend to bury them for some reason. So, and then I was told, it's like, well, that's how people were told to do it. So it's like, you guys get to fix it. So now that you know, yeah.
Can you define suckering?
Sure. It's because the root collar is buried, but the tree is trying to make up for its predicament, and it's almost like a panic reaction. It's almost creating, you know, like when you have your, well, it's for the same reason, lilac sucker. They're buried as well, but it's the tree trying to make more of itself because it's in a predicament. So trees with their root collars where they belong don't sucker, which is interesting. But you know, over the last 4 years, well, longer, but more recently in the last 4 years, because I'm out at a tree nursery specifically, I've been in a lot of yards and seen some very interesting root collar berry situations with the suckering happening. everybody's like, oh, it's the mulch. No, it's not. It's that soil. It's that soil sticking around. So yep, go ahead.
One question, if you have a tree that is suckering, if you dig down and expose
Can you
the ground, can
work
you
on it?
stop the suckering and help the tree?
How long has the tree been in? Because sometimes it's sort of like, okay, I've been like this 5 to 7 years, 10 years, or longer, and it might be one of those, I don't know if you could, if you can unearth the root collar, have at, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, it's a dogwood that's about 10 years old, but I've got like 3 suckers and I've cut them off, but then they keep coming back.
Yeah. So dig down. I can't guarantee you're gonna find the original root collar because the tree's probably made adjustments by now. So if it's suckering, I'm almost gonna guarantee those adventitious roots have pushed out and they're probably fairly mature. So they're gonna, they're making up for the other buried roots that couldn't do their job. So the tree's like, well, I'll put some out here. We'll just start over. It's not healthy, but that's what the tree does because it has to. This happens in the wild. If you're walking around in the wild, there's suckering trees in the wild and whatnot. It's because their root collar has become buried by something, whether it's another tree fell over them or it's on a hill and there's a little bit of a landslide because it's the soil's not stable. Something it happens in the wild. So, but we paid for our trees and we're trying to grow them healthy. So, but yeah. So yeah, I would say give it a try. Definitely. If you, we can talk afterward if you want. Yeah. Okay. But this is, Judy, you were present at the Brown Lake talk I gave. Okay, so the room went very, very quiet while I did a little drawing of what's happening as the tree is slowly girdling itself, and I'm like, I need to do that different because the room got very somber. I'm like, oh goodness, yes. So you remember. But it is, it's good to have these pictures now, and I was able to go out to the tree field and watch the spading happen, and I'm like, oh gosh, and it's, it's easier to see on a deciduous tree but it's the same thing with the evergreens. It's just got branches in your way at that point. So if you're planting bare root, just know to make sure to plant your soil level at where the shoulder starts, where that round starts. That is your soil line. And after you get everything in, just paw that back. You're gonna find a few roots in there because during the growing season, they're above ground. They're still like, well, I could put some roots out into that. Don't prune them off. Whatever roots you find, just let them air prune on their own. They will. The tree will figure out, well, I no longer need these. But so food for thought on that. Food to use, or thought to use, I guess. All right, so planting day, root builders, the healthy soil community. This is getting everybody thinking about their soil different. It's not just something we plant a tree in. The tree doesn't just grow in the soil, it grows with the soil. And the soil will decide whether the tree gets to stay and how healthy it is. So if we're not building the soil, we're not helping the tree. So, Espoma biotone and bumper crop, I'm not gonna sound like an infomercial, but those are up there on purpose because they have the beneficial mycorrhizae in them. Trees need those to live, and I know it's something, we're all hearing about it finally and whatnot. So this isn't new news though, this is something they've known forever, but it's finally like, how do we deliver this so everybody gets it? Well, we're there finally. So just understand that it's the soil biology that helps that tree grow, and then, makes the connections. I keep telling everybody, like, you're marrying the tree to the soil, it's shaking hands and making friendships. I said marry one day, and the husband just shook his head. I'm like, what? You're married, now you get to marry the tree to the soil, it's fine. So, but this is going to help out with that. And a lot of times people are like, well, you're not supposed to use fertilizers when you plant. This is not for the tree, this is for the soil. So, it's a different way of thinking. Be the soil, yes, it's around the root ball you just put in, but it's geared toward the soil. The soil will find its way to your roots and work on that.
What's in it?
What's in it?
Yeah.
So the Espoma biotone, ecto and endomycorrhizae. So the ecto, your woody plants, shrubs and trees, they need the ecto and the endomycorrhizae for a healthy root system and for, finding their nutrients, trade-offs. I call it bartering, but there's probably a scientist cringing right now, but it's bartering under the soil. Like you're marrying, there's bartering, there's friendships, all kinds of fun stuff going on down there. It's a community. The bumper crop also has those things in it, as well as other organic materials. There are organic materials that the tree can't use right away, nor can it use them effectively without the mycorrhizal friendship. So again, you're feeding the soil, and then the tree will benefit once it's settling in.
Would compost be the same?
Compost is part of it. Compost you'll help fix textures in the soil because it's a different particle size. And you're also going to have nutrients available to the tree. I'm not saying your tree isn't going to be able to get any of those nutrients. It's just going to do it better if the soil biology is being amended.
So it has like guaranteed microbiome.
Yes,
Yeah.
and the ones that are focused on majority of the plants we like to grow, and trees, natives included. So this isn't some foreign bag of mycorrhizal activity. It is, yeah. I was at a lecture last summer and totally asked the wrong question about mycorrhizae, like adding it for growing trees. And the speaker was like, the legendary hand of soil now. It's like, it's in the soil already. I'm like, you don't understand. Like, we're growing on farm fields that haven't had trees on them forever, so they don't have that mycorrhizal background in the soil biology. So I was like, sheepishly sat back down, like, thanks. I'll ask somebody else. but that's what it is. It's and I did find somebody else to ask, and that person did confirm that if you haven't had trees growing in an area for quite some time, you don't have the buildup of that mycorrhizal activity. Yeah, spot on, absolutely.
Do you use one or the other, or use both?
Depends upon, good question. So it depends upon where or what the people are working with as far as soil. So if somebody tells me, I just built a new house and they just brought soil in, they're getting both. I just want to bulk it up because majority of the soils that are being brought in to fill in around homes after they've been built and whatnot, there's very little for organic matter. I think I had it sent out one time, it was 2 to 3% organic matter tops. It's not even close to where you want it to be. So if we're building a soil, I start with both. If somebody tells me, well, I've been in my yard for years and I've done, and they're talking about the different things they've done with it and whatnot. It could be one or the other depending upon the soil texture and what's been done. So, yeah.
Does it matter what type of tree was there before? Like if you have pines and then cut that down, plant maples, does that matter?
It doesn't matter when it's that way, but I was
Yes.
just talking, so if, when you get into nut trees, sometimes there's like tannins and things left in the soil, so that might matter, but as far as what your next tree selection would be, but as far as using these, no, won't make a difference.
How about if you're starting from a seedling, you're not gonna use this product immediately?
You can, it's
You
not,
can?
it won't burn them, it's feeding the soil, so it's not gonna burn the seedling, there's nothing in there that can burn it. You could dump the whole bag of biotone around the seedling and you'd end up choking the seedling, but not burning it. It would, yeah, absolutely. Either one of those, so like if your soil's a little sandier, and you're like, well, I need to add a little something, that's where the bumper crop would come in, because it has more of the, your organics and things like that. Whereas, if you're like, well, I have great soil, I just need to add some mycorrhizal activity to it, the biotone would do that for you. But yeah, no, you can use it with any age plant. It's, I can't see you. Trust me. Yes.
So if you wanted to like give your plants a boost, if you knew your soil was poor, but something was already planted,
Yes.
can you add some of this around the?
You can, yep. So, and I'm gonna keep moving because, that's actually part of the continued care at the end here. yes is the answer to that. So here, no laughing, but this is the little drawing that I do to help people with watering. Seriously, no laughing. So that is my professional drawing for people for watering. And that is the only way. I have not found a professionally done, maybe I need help from somebody here, but I have not found a professionally done schematic for how to water a root ball, like a new root ball. And it doesn't matter if it's one of those great big root balls or if it's a little 10-gallon container or whatever, it doesn't matter. That's watering. The trunk does not need water. I see a lot of people, and I've seen lots of these pictures where this is the trunk and they're watering right down the trunk. I'm like, what are you doing? So the trunk doesn't need water. Ignore any of those fun little pictures and photos that you see of people watering religiously at the trunk. You want to come out, so from about 6 to 10 inches away from the trunk and obviously over the root zone, over the root ball, and then into your planting hole, and then a little beyond. So you don't want to make everything perfect in the planting hole only. You've got to make sure you go a little bit beyond with that water. And then good long saturation. So for one of those big root balls, they're like 18 inches deep, and you gotta let that water run for a while. So you can either do your hose on there for about, and this is where it gets fun. Everybody's like, well, I'll just put the hose on, here's my trunk again, put the hose on and walk away for 2 hours, and I watered my tree. You watered this half of your tree. So if you can, think about it, do 20 minutes to half an hour on this side and move it on the quarters so you get all of it. It's a little more moving, but you're gonna have a happier root ball for that matter, so, yep.
Another question. Okay, so many of us got seedlings last weekend,
Yes.
and they weren't all picked up, so I brought a red oak home, and I really didn't have an ideal place to plant it. I planted it in a forever wild area across the street from my house, put it southern exposure, got it as far away as I could, put a little, tomato cage around it so nobody would mow it. And then I thought about watering. So I watered it well, but one source that I looked at said you should water a seedling weekly. Another source I looked at said water it every day for the first 2 to 3 weeks, and then gradually every 3 days, every 5 days. I've been watering it daily just because, I've been concerned. What's the right answer?
The right answer is there is no set schedule. So, and if they're, set schedules are for humans, they're not for the plants. So basically go out and check the soil. So your root zone is 4 inches wide and 10 inches deep. You're gonna stick your hand in, or I keep a trowel or my little digging knife with me. This is my digging knife. It's about 6 to 8 inches long, and I stick it in, not into the root area, but next to it. So I can open up a little slice in the earth, stick my hand in and be like, okay, 6 inches deep, everything's wet. When it's dry that deep, that's when I'm gonna give it another solid drink. When you water the whole root area, and most of it should dry before you water again. So if you're watering every day, there's a good chance, and it depends on your soil type, but still there's a good chance that you're gonna fill up the air pockets in the soil with water. You still need some air down in there for the roots.
It's really hard to get a consistent answer. Everybody seems to have a different way of handling it, so I like what you've said.
Yeah, yep, and that's because it is different, but it's, again, check first. Even on those, the big root balls, checking that 6 to 8 inches deep next to the root ball, so that green line, I'm glad you're asking this, that's what the green line is up there. Sticking in a trowel, that's my side profile of a trowel, but everybody gets it, right? Sticking it in and just being like, okay, it's wet 6 to 8 inches deep, and I know that I've watered very, very thoroughly, so I know, 6 to 8 inches deep means that whole root ball is starting to get dry. So, that's the easiest way that I've found to describe to people how to water a full root ball. We have it easy. We're watering them above ground. We're running a sprinkler for hours on end to water root balls, and it takes probably, I I wanna say at least a couple hours to water, like an area about, the size of this room, full of the, root balls sitting above ground and whatnot, to get that whole, root ball saturated. Couple hours, that means that, probably the sprinkler has run around a few times, and just to reach saturation, so. Now that I've said sprinklers, down on the bottom, don't rely on sprinklers, the lawn sprinklers, to water your new tree, because it's not gonna water long enough, deep enough. It does a fine job for the lawn, but when it comes to watering your tree, what it's gonna do, it's gonna give you a false reading. So when you go to test 4 to 6 inches deep, you're like, oh, it's wet. And if you don't reach just a little further and realize, oh, it's dry down below because the sprinkler is only hitting the top 4 inches, you'll start getting these weird reactions. And if the sprinkler runs twice a day because the lawn needs it, you'll end up with signs of underwatering and overwatering, depending upon which root, which set of roots are being affected by dryness and overwatering from the sprinkler. So it's, and I have seen that, it's really interesting. It's easier to read in an evergreen because evergreens, like the center part of the plant will dry out and die and just start dropping central. It's the older part of the plant. And then the very tips get either blackish, brownish, or very yellowish, depending upon what's up with the pH of the water. When you're working with deciduous trees, sometimes it's a little harder because you're like, well, is that tree just having a bad day? Because it's been really hot, because, it just looks crispy on the edge. So it's, but, check the soil just a little deeper if you do have sprinklers that are running. Everybody's sprinklers are on the lawn. But just check you might want to have to check closer to that 10 inches to see if things are running dry or not. And then still go out with a hose